Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went on CNN and spoke to Jake Tapper about the election. It's a much longer interview than this. You can go watch the whole thing. They go over a wide range of issues. You know, she's become a politician. I mean, it sounds silly to say, but it's true. And what I mean by that is her politician skills have been sharpened since she's gotten to Washington, and she knows how to successfully dodge, deflect, and obfuscate. And so she's asked about very real substantive differences between the left and Joe Biden, and very artfully she finds a way to say, well, yeah, there are those differences, but they're kind of irrelevant because step number one is getting Trump out, and then it's a matter of who do we want to push when they're in the White House. So, you know, that's basically her line. Her line is, I enthusiastically support Joe, even though we have many disagreements, and I'm going to lobby him to be better on these issues. You know, say what you want about that approach, that strategy, that mindset. I'll just remind everybody, ain't nothing going to happen with Joe. He ain't going left. He is who he is. And you could say, hey, on those merits alone, better than Trump. Fair enough. But don't delude yourself into thinking you're going to push him left and he's somehow going to be like FDR or Noam Chomsky in office. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's incredibly naive. Anyway, that's not the point of this segment. She was asked about Obama. This is actually a decent question from Jake Tapper here. It's a little bit of bait, too, because Jake Tapper knows Obama has a very high approval rating, and so he wants to, like, bait AOC, who's one of the representatives of the left flank in D.C. He wants to bait AOC into, like, attacking Obama, and she doesn't take the bait on it. But you guys know me, I kind of wish she did, because I don't think we're ever going to get real change if we don't acknowledge the failures of everybody who's come before us. And when you try to gloss over those failures and act like, in fact, they weren't failures, okay, well, then you're going to get more of the same. Because you're not even really diagnosing what one of the problems was in what led to Trump. So anyway, here's what she said about Obama, and then we'll break it down.
Do you think the Obama presidency was not a progressive presidency?
No, I think President Obama did everything he could with the limitations of a Republican Senate and, frankly, a Republican-controlled Congress with much of his term. But, you know, I think that being said, there were, of course, progressive demands that were, and progressive wishes that weren't exactly met, but that wasn't solely due to President Obama. We desperately wanted even to settle for a public option during that time, and it frankly wasn't President Obama's fault that didn't happen. You know, I do believe that there are certain areas like foreign policy where there was much to be desired, and I don't believe that, for example, in certain areas like progressive policy, there wasn't necessarily it wasn't as progressive as perhaps many folks in this country would have liked. But you know, if we have an opportunity, if we work hard enough to elect folks like Jamie Harrison, to make sure that we protect seats like Gary Peters, and to make sure that we unseat Republicans like Joni Ernst, and we have the unique, frankly, once in a generation opportunity to have the White House, the Senate, and the House majorities democratically controlled, then I believe we have an obligation to the American people to show what a Democratic administration can actually accomplish, and that we can govern, and that we can truly have leaps in policy that people can feel in their everyday lives that makes voting Democratic not just worthwhile, but a memorable shift from just a flat line of this idea of bipartisanship, which often just becomes Republican manipulation.
The main thing I take issue with is when she says Obama did everything he could with the limitations of Congress. And the reason I take issue with that is it's just factually not true. Obama himself admitted in a moment of honesty in an interview, my politics are basically that of a moderate Republican from the 1980s. That's where I fall. That's what I am. Those are his words, not my words. That's what he said. That's what he said. And he's correct. Those are his politics. So when she comes out here and says, well, he did everything he could with the limitations of Congress, it's not his fault, that's whitewashing his history of not really pushing for the things that at times he pretends like he pushed for. Like, she even brings up the public option and says, hey, listen, I mean, what are you going to do? It wasn't his fault. He tried. But that's the thing. He didn't. He didn't try. He brought it up for 2.5 seconds, and then he immediately backed off of it under the tiniest bit of pushback from Blue Dogs and from people like Joe Lieberman. So I need you to understand what somebody would have done in that position had they actually believed in this. Because if you're president and you have a supermajority, you know what you do? You call into your office the Blue Dogs and everybody who's raising a stink about this and saying they don't want to support it. You call them in your office and you let them know in a very straightforward way, just like how FDR would have done or LBJ would have done, perhaps JFK would have done. And you say to them, listen, this is an opportunity for you. If you support this legislation, if you support Medicare for all, what I'll do is, I'm the president. I don't know if you noticed. I have a very high approval rating at the moment. I just got elected. The country loves me. They don't even know you. They don't even care about you. Who are you? I will use my celebrity, my popularity, to go and campaign for you in your state, and I'll use all of the resources of the Democratic Party, which I'm now the head of, to make sure you're fully funded for your next race, and we will crush any primary challenger against you, and we will crush the Republicans who are running against you. You have my word. You will get reelected if you support this piece of legislation. Now, if you don't, I'll make your life a living hell. I'll campaign against you. I'll support a primary challenger against you. The Democratic Party will fund the primary challenge against you, and you don't have a future in this town. I'll tell everybody I know, you're an untouchable. You're unhireable. You think you're going to go from here to a nice cushy lobbyist job? Wrong. Think again. I'll make sure that doesn't happen either. I'll run you out of town. Hey, like them apples. So you tell me. You support the legislation. We're besties. I get you reelected. Or you don't, and we're enemies. You want to pick a fight with the most powerful person in the world? Be my guest. That's what you do if you really believe in it. Now, you might say, oh my God. So I brought this up one time previously, and somebody was, oh my God, how authoritarian is that? It's not authoritarian when the American people agree with you on the substantive policy that you're pushing for. That's called good politics. That's what that is. We got 70% of the country wants Medicare for all. If you're twisting arms to make sure we get Medicare for all, you're a hero. You're a hero. So that's what you do. He didn't do any of that. He was like, yeah, I kind of want the public option. And then the second Blue Dogs were like, I don't think so. He's like, okay, no, you're right. Let's do Mitt Romney's healthcare plan. Let's do the right-wing healthcare plan. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, it is his fault. It is his fault. Beyond that, he said he was going to end the Iraq war. He didn't end the Iraq war. Or he did for 2.5 seconds and immediately put the troops back in. Beyond that, he bailed out Wall Street. It wasn't a bailout of the homeowners. It was a bailout of Wall Street. His cabinet was appointed by Citigroup. The list goes on and on. He expanded NSA spying. He expanded the drone war. Now, does this mean everything he did was wrong? No. You have to be an idiot to believe that. I think what he did with Iran was great. I think what he did with Cuba was great. I think in his second term when he was freeing some nonviolent drug offenders, I think that was great. But don't whitewash his legacy and act like, oh, what could he have done? No, because then what you're saying is I'm substantively lining up with a moderate Republican as I pretend like I'm the left flank in Congress. If you're going along with his record and whitewashing his record, that's not the left flank. So my point is, listen, you have to, when you're somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, what you need to understand is Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are never going to like you. They're never going to respect you. They're never going to agree with you. So the way that you work with them is not to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and do whatever they want, which is what the donors want. What you do is you make them bend to your will. You have one tool in your toolbox, just one, but it's a powerful one. It's the people. She's already one of the most followed members of Congress, if not the most followed member of Congress. Use the bully pulpit. You have the bully pulpit. Who cares if you piss off Nancy Pelosi? Because then if she tries to do some retribution and keep you off some committee or some shit, you call that out too. And you show how dirty the system is. You show how corrupt the system is. Use the bully pulpit. Use the people. leverage the people against these politicians. Nancy Pelosi would think twice about certain policies if every time she inches in the bad direction, in a corporate direction, her office gets phone calls for a week and a half straight of people saying, you're a failure, you're terrible, we're actually going to primary you, we don't like you. But instead they all, AOC and all the other lefties, they go along to get along, and they act like, oh, Obama, he didn't really do anything wrong. It was the limitations of Congress that did him in. And it's the same with Nancy Pelosi. It's the same with Chuck Schumer. So stop and think about that. We have a system where Obama openly works against the left. Openly works against the left. What did he do? You know what he did. He made the phone call to Amy Klobuchar and Mayor Pete, got them to drop out and endorse Biden at the last minute. At the same time, Elizabeth Warren stayed in and siphoned votes from Bernie, stabbed him in the back for a second time. Obama works against the left. Pelosi works against the left. Schumer works against the left. They openly work against the left. And is the left openly working against them? No. They're calling Pelosi Mama Bear and saying, gosh golly, Obama did everything he could have done. Tee-hee-hee. I wonder why we get nothing done. This is cucktastic. This is nothing personal against her. She's a very lovely person. She really is. And I think she really means well, which is why I'm doing this segment, to try to be like, they don't like you. They hate you. Stop covering for them. Stop covering for them. Yes, Obama has a high approval rating. One of the reasons he does is because nobody ever brings up his failures. Nobody on the left ever says, you said you were going to end the wars and you didn't end the wars. You bailed out Wall Street when you pretended like you were tough on Wall Street. You didn't even fight for a public option. Why did you make the NSA spying bigger and worse and then hand it off to Trump? You created these terrible institutions and handed them off to a narcissistic madman? Hey, maybe you shouldn't have built out those institutions. Maybe you should have dismantled them. I care about the truth, and this is not true about Obama. But what she's trying to do is say, hey, we're right up next to an election. Trump is the devil, and so we got to unify, and let me say some kind words about all of them. They will not be returning that favor. That's what I need everybody to understand.